We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andreen. I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. And I have really been out of the loop as far as world news. All I know is that we don't have a ceasefire between Ukraine and Russia yet. That was last Friday. Alaska meeting. Yeah, they were kind of downplaying that in the days before the President Trump and Vladimir Putin meeting in Alaska. So they were already downplaying it and indeed have no ceasefire agreement. But what else? We got crazy evacuation orders in most of, I believe it's Nova Scotia, right? Over East Coast Canada. Wildfire stuff there. But over here on the West Coast, we had a couple of days solid of pretty substantial rainfall, which, if you know forest fires, it's not like 2 days of rainfall puts out a forest fire, but it is better than it not being that way. It was it was a help over here that we had that. It's been really weird temperature wise over here. It was like downright kind of chilly yesterday. Which is very bizarre. I had a horrible sleep last night because it was too cold to have the fan or the AC going, but it was still humid enough that it didn't really feel great without something going. So I
that's
did
really
not sleep
the
well
news
last night.
for this week is that Rob didn't sleep well.
Hey man, that's when I didn't keep up with any social media or online news, I got to give context somehow, and it'll explain
now Rob
my.
Will remember. It was that night that it was too hot.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, too muggy.
Yeah, tell me about how hot it is, Rob. From Florida. Tell me how hot it is.
Muggy. You don't know anything about muggy in Florida, Tom.
Oh, we don't. We don't have humidity. What's that?
So, was there any other world news that struck in your mind this week, or that we left out?
But
really important?
if all goes to plan, I will be the owner of a new. Well, I will be partial owner of a new house.
Wow!
Starting on Thursday. So
Thursday, holy smokes!
That's today's. I know If it seems like it snuck up on you as the listener, believe me, as the person who's on the other side, it's also sneaking up. That being said, my phone is currently blowing up because the money was supposed to be transferred from one bank to another.
Right.
It was supposed to have already happened, and it hasn't happened yet. And there is a flurry of texts going through right now, trying to figure out. Yeah, it hasn't been received this second. So my wife is now, let's say,
perturbed,
not optimistic that Thursday will actually be the closing date, but so my son is Tuesday, so my one son is moving back to college today.
Okay.
And the other son will be moving on Friday, and he's moving further away, so I have to drive him. He also doesn't have a car, which is part of the problem, but that's his problem, not mine. So I will be taking Friday off. So if they try to push the closing date a day, I will not be here. I will be on the road.
Right,
it's like a 5-hour drive one way.
Tight timing on top of everything else. Alrighty. Well,
but hopefully. Now, I will not be moving in. There's still stuff that has to be done at the house before we move in. And my wife is waffling on the theater room. So it is... I mean, is
that room like needed for some other purpose?
Yes. We have 3 children and 4 total bedrooms. So in theory, each child would have their own bedroom, but she's now thinking that would be a better office. And then we put the TV in the main living area, which I'm not excited about. But we shall see. So I am. This is a delicate situation for those of you that are married or have been married. You know that this is a delicate situation. We do not push these things.
I mean, right now, while there's like headaches about payments and that, isn't it the perfect time to raise that question this second during the podcast as well?
This
Tom?
is the time to draw the line in the sand, is what you're suggesting, Mr. Single? Yes, that's exactly right.
I think you should respond back to any of her concerns about bank payments with, "Hey, what about the home theater?
What about the home
right
theater?
now?
Where are we going to put the TV?"
Seems like it's the priority that should take precedent. It'll serve as a great distraction to the payment problems.
The distraction will be where she will be digging the hole in the ground to throw my body. So, yes, that is.
I mean, you still own the old property, so you know.
So we will. So it's still a little up in the air.
Yeah.
I'm still hopeful. One of the things I want to do, and I think would be beneficial, because what she's not saying. So in our old house, we had like a living area, like the kitchen area, the living area, and then there was like this. It was a screened-in porch that got enclosed, but it had a big opening, so it was sort of kind of part of the kitchen, but not really. And it was just, we ended up putting like a big, long double desk in that room, facing out along these large windows into our backyard, and that's where the desks were. I would not consider myself to be a cleanly person or a really clean person. I'm not the kind of person whose desk is always in perfect order.
Right, yeah.
But I tend to pick up, like in this house, I am by far the person who cleans up after themselves the most. Okay. And my wife is a stacker. She stacks stuff. So she has a pile of paper here and another pile of paper over there. And another, it becomes a thing. So I think, and she's not saying this, but I think her concern is that she doesn't want to have to clean up her office area every time we have guests over.
Yeah.
And
so hide it behind
my plan was just put the desk in the desks in the main living room, living area again. We have all this room out there with really nothing to do with it other than, that sort of thing, or a TV, which I don't want to do. And there's a perfect spot for it with next to two windows. We could put two desks there, and you would have a view of nothing, but it would still be a window. And I think what she's really thinking is, she's going to stack papers everywhere, anywhere. Yep. Anyways, I can't stop her from doing that. I've been married over 20 years, almost 25 years. It's not going to happen. She's going to stack papers, and that's fine. That's her.
And your guests and friends are the sort of people who would judge you negatively for having a stack of papers in your work area. That really doesn't sound like the worst thing.
No, it's really not. But I think she's thinking if it's in a separate room, then I won't. It'll be easier. It's not how it works. I mean,
also, it tends to be great motivation for actually tidying up the way that most of us are thinking, I really should tidy up, and then we procrastinate. Most of us do. And then sometimes having the guests over is a great little motivator for that.
So I'm now sort of thinking about different, I think we should put desks in different rooms. Okay. And have one, have a couch and then have a desk behind the couch, on the wall. And she's like, there's not going to be enough room for that because the room's so small. I'm like, just means we get a smaller TV because we're going to sit closer to it. It'll be fine. But, you can put my desk in there and you can put her desk in a different room. Yeah. But,
well, if your setup ends up in the main living area, maybe you just end up with those JTR Kalos speakers. You're going to need some loud output with some high efficiency.
Yeah. Sure. That'll go over like a ton of bricks. How would you feel like $1,900 a pop speakers? It's not that big of a living area, but we shall see. So that is the current situation with the Tom's hopefully gonna have a home theater room again. I will eventually. It's inevitable. That will happen. There's no world in which I don't end up with one of those bedrooms being a theater room.
Eventually,
at some point.
You're not going to have all three kids having bedrooms forever. So
and then it's not going to be. There's my son's room, who is the youngest, who's still in high school, so he's clearly needs his own room. Yeah. There's a guest room, which is going to be for whichever of the kids, but there's still that third room is not going to be a bedroom. Mm. It's going to be a office if she gets her way. She's like, we'll put a couch in there. I'm like, how are we putting two freaking desks and a futon in this thing? Yeah. It's like you're not thinking super rationally here, but we'll see. We'll see how the
We'll
whole thing
cross
plays
that
out.
bridge when we get to it. Got to have
Yes.
the closing of the house first. That's
Yes.
kind of step
Yes.
number one. One step.
But I know that's the only thing that people in this podcast care about is where's the speakers going to go.
That's right.
I agree. And
how
believe
will Tom be convinced to have not just 5, not just 7, but 9 floor level speakers? Because it's about time Tom had both surround backs and front wides, don't we think?
You're looking for the next house if you want that to happen. Because that's not happening in this one, guaranteed.
I see. Well,
So,
just before we move on, just had a little family get together over the weekend. We celebrated my niece's birthday an entire month early. Partially just because of my sister, her schedule, her work schedule, and that is really not free on weekends for like the entire next 2 months. But also just because my niece kind of wanted her birthday money a little bit early, which you know what. I can understand at that sort of tweenager age that she's at right now. So none of us were complaining, but it gave me an opportunity. I have made lots and lots of fun of that switch to camera because I've thought that it's A, overpriced, and B, doesn't look very good. But it turns out you can use virtually any Logitech webcam, as long as it's got a USB-C port, and I just used a USB-A to USB-C adapter. Works perfectly fine. There are multiple other ones as well, but Logitech's entire lineup works, and I have a Logitech webcam. So yeah, I just tried that out while we were over there, and I've got to say, I think Nintendo, I don't know if it was entirely intentional or if they just hit upon this by accident and then realized kind of the way it was. It's janky. It doesn't look fantastic in any way, but it's that perfect level of like just the right amount of jank that it's fun. It's like, and when you're talking, hey, Nintendo Switch 2, what do you want it to be? You want it to be fun. And it's like they somehow, either by accident or just noticing the way it was, hit upon that perfect level where it definitely doesn't look great, but it's just good enough and it's just slightly janky enough that it actually is fun to play with. So I've turned the corner a little bit on occasionally having a camera attached to the Switch 2. What makes it okay in my book now is I would still never buy the dedicated Nintendo Switch 2 camera. I think that's a ridiculous accessory, but a lot of us have a webcam somewhere, even if we're maybe not even using it anymore. You've probably got one in a drawer somewhere or a closet somewhere, and it's like,
I don't, but you do. Yes.
Yeah. You plug a webcam into the thing, and you can have a little fun with Mario Party Jamboree, which we did. So there we go. Kudos to Nintendo for whatever the methodology was of arriving at the quality level, which is the perfect level of jank. So there we go.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. So last 2 weeks ago, we talked about Jack. Jack has offered up a Dayton OmniMic as a giveaway here on the podcast. We wanted to mention it one more time before we chose.
Yeah, we even said that we would, and then
so,
last week
we forgot last week.
Completely did not register in my mind at all until I was like looking back through emails and I was like, oh yeah, Dayton OmniMic completely went out of my mind last week, so I apologize.
Okay. So Jack wants to give away a Dayton OmniMic to one of our valued listeners. So if you are a listener who is just thinking about getting or has the desire to get into doing some of your own measurements, or if you have the desire to try out Drac and you're like, but I need a mic for that, and it'll be a thing. This is your solution.
Yes.
So if you are, then just email us at question@avrant.com and we will put you in the running. So we have a couple people already, and we want to make sure that we give everybody else a chance to catch up on episodes and stuff like that. So next week we will be choosing. So this is, I don't know, what's the post date of this thing? 21st, right?
Yeah, that's when the audio only version is going up. Yeah.
So the 21st is when this is coming out, and the 28th will be the day that we choose. So you need to get it in before. Before that is the 26th. You need to get it in before August 26th.
Is that what we're saying? Does that work out? Is that when the topic list is going to be ready and all that? I can't.
25th. Let's go 25th. Just do it right now.
6 days
Just
from
stop
now. Yeah,
what
25th.
you're doing.
Yeah,
pull
25th.
over to the side of the road if you're listening to this in your car, pull over to the side of the road because you don't want to write an email while you're driving. Pull over to the side of the road, say, I'm in for the OmniMic.
That's about all you need to say as well.
That's
Question at avrant.com. We said we'd mention it one more time and give opportunity, so I'm sticking to my word. I was ready to flip a coin and choose today, but then I was like, nah, we said we'd mention it one more time at least. So we've got to be fair, stick true to our word. There you go. Odds are pretty good.
Next week.
Yes.
To get in by the 24th. Every time I mention it, it's like an N -1.
That's right. Iterate.
All right, Rob, what did you watch? Because I didn't watch crap.
Okay, yeah, I didn't watch a ton this week either, but I did check out one movie, which was Death of a Unicorn. Fairly recent movie. This is starring Paul Rudd and Jenna Ortega. They were actually executive producers on this movie as well, so I think that's how they're
I feel like I saw something about this movie. I definitely saw advertisements for it, and I definitely thought that looks interesting, but I can't remember anything else other than that.
So one of the main selling points of it for me is that it's an A24 production, and A24, I've liked a lot of their movies. They have a lot more hits than misses for me. Not gigantic budgets, but they sort of let creators do their thing. They go for a little bit off the beaten path as far as the things that they greenlight, and so I'm seeing the A24 logo, I'm always like, ooh, this is probably going to be good. So we've also got some other heavy hitting actors in this movie. We've got Tia Leone and Richard E. Grant, and then Will Poulter. He was like Adam Warlock in the Guardians of the Galaxy 3 movie. That actor, and Anthony Carrigan. He's the actor he was Hank on NoHo Hank on Barry, and he was also just recently Metamorpho in Superman, although you wouldn't really recognize him under all that makeup.
Yeah.
But yeah, great actors across the board in this. Death of a Unicorn. It's right there in the poster in the description. Paul Rudd and Jenna Ortega, their father and daughter. He's going to sort of a remote location in the far north magical land of Canada, because where else would you find a unicorn but in the far north magical land of Canada? That's where they're going for this sort of retreat business meeting with his bosses. He's like the lawyer for the company, and on the drive up there, they hit a unicorn with their car, and
as one does.
That is the beginning. That is the death of the unicorn. And so this movie, I enjoyed it. So you were going to say something there? It sounded like.
Well, I was going to say, at least it's not like that Disney black hole movie where you spend the whole movie waiting for the black hole to show up, and at the very end they go into the black hole, and that's the end of the movie. This one, at least, Death of the Unicorn, it dies right away. You're
right
like,
up front. Right up front.
They didn't lie.
It is the initiating incident is the death of the unicorn.
I like that. I appreciate that.
Yes.
I came here for a unicorn death, and at the very least, I'm leaving with one.
Yeah, so, and I don't consider that a spoiler because the title sort of hints that there might be
hints at
a death of a unicorn in this movie. And so, yes, I did enjoy this movie, but I can't say I was like over the moon about it, mainly because it's as far as like the depiction of all the characters in this movie, it's fairly paint by numbers. Like there's no character in this movie who does anything that you wouldn't expect from the sort of cookie cutter characterizations that you have in here. So you have the patriarch of the family who is ill and only cares about money and his legacy, and you have the misbehaving son who thinks that all his ideas are fantastic, but of course he's a bit of an idiot. And honestly, I think my favorite character in this was Tia Leone. She's playing the wife, who is of course much younger than the patriarch of the family, but I thought her humor and her comedy in this movie, because this is I don't even know if it's all that dark. It's primarily a comedy. It's like a little bit playing the unicorns that are in this a little bit for horror, but it's all kind of comedy horror. And I'm not sure that it's even really that dark. I mean, there's some kind of death and a little bit of gore, so it's not exactly completely lighthearted and kid-friendly fare or anything like that, but it's not really that dark as far as anything goes. So yeah, I really enjoyed Tia Leone's character in this because she did the thing of the, fake niceness. Everything we're doing is for the greater good, but it's all completely driven by greed. Again, not like surprising characterization. There's no like gigantic twist on any of this, but I just thought the performance that she gave was really quite good amongst this very, very stacked cast that we've gotten here. So yeah, I was just kind of wishing maybe there was a little bit more originality or a little bit more of a character arc for any of these. Like they really were sort of cookie cutter characterization. So as long as you're okay with it playing out pretty much exactly the way you expect it to, the people who you want to see get their comeuppance, and the little bit of a heartstrings tugging is kind of manufactured between father and daughter, and she's the moody teenager, but she's the only one who really sort of sees things for the way that they are. It's like it's all pretty paint by numbers as far as that goes. So that's what I mean. I'm not like over the moon about it, but it is absolutely enjoyable. The performances are good. Now, this didn't have a gigantic budget. They were working with Weta Digital for the effects. The unicorns are unsurprisingly CGI. And I mean, since it's Weta, it's better than you might expect the effects to look for the budget they were working with, but even Weta has their limits, right? Primarily the thing when you're given a very small budget is that you just don't have time as a special effects company, and so you could see it. These weren't like the very best special effects you've ever seen, but I thought for the budget that this movie shot for, I'm like, that was surprisingly good effects. Now, they did what I feel is a pretty common mistake these days, which is for the most of the movie, the unicorns are in the darkness, they're in the shadows, they're in the mist. And so that works. It's a great way to, sort of hide any of the details. They don't have to look completely photorealistic because you're seeing them in short moments and in the shadows and in the mist. But then they do the thing where full daylight scene, full on see a unicorn. And it's like, honestly, it's Weta. It looked pretty decent, but it didn't look quite perfect. They weren't able to quite perfectly blend the shadows and the ray tracing onto the existing photography of the actors and all that, the stuff that they could do if they had way more time and budget. So I give them kudos, but at the same time it doesn't look perfectly flawless. Anthony Carrigan was hilarious in this movie. He's basically kind of the butler of the family, very put upon, very underappreciated, and again, kind of a cookie cutter character, but everybody played their sort of stereotypical roles well. So yeah, I think it's a fun time. I don't think it's going to change your life or view of storytelling. But yeah, Death of a Unicorn gets a thumbs up from me. Not super high, but it gets a thumbs up. And A24 continues to put out, fun, small budget movies that you probably aren't going to see from other production companies. So good on them. Oh, other thing it was kind of funny because, again, to kind of save on budget, I believe they said they actually filmed most of this movie in Hungary. Even though it's set in Canada, and normally they were shooting in Canada to bring the budgets down, but now we have Hungary standing in for Canada throughout most of this movie, which was kind of funny and humorous. You don't really particularly notice, but you did get some view of the Alps, which I'm like, the Alps are not in Canada.
You guys have mountains.
We do have mountains, yeah.
It's like that guy who's always complaining about, I know him. I heard an interview with a man who was in very much into birds and bird calls, and he's a birder person or whatever, and he can't watch movies because he gets irritated that the bird sounds are all wrong for wherever they're supposed to be because they're always filming in Canada or whatever. It's like the rest of us don't care. It just sounds like a bird.
So some of the species of plants are not going to be correct. I will just say, I know there are some people who they cringe and cannot stand when a lot of what goes on in a movie or a TV show is because nobody will pause for 2 seconds to hear what somebody has to say. As for some people, that's a huge turnoff. This entire movie revolves around that. So I just want to give that the entire way this movie plays out is because no one will pause for 2 seconds to listen to anybody else. That is the crux of this movie. So if that is a complete no-go for you, then you have now been warned.
Yeah, that's going to trigger somebody.
Yep.
All right. This is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your questions answered, all you have to do is ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. Go to the website, find our shows, show notes, Flickr album so you can follow along with the pictures, as well as links to any products or articles that we reference here. Facebook.com/AVRant podcast, YouTube.com/AVRant. YouTube, you can follow along with the pictures as well. Will be integrated into that video, which maybe someday will be better than what we currently use, but today is not that day.
Nope.
Contact Rob directly, rob@avrant.com. His socials is @FirstReflect. I'm Tom at avrant.com. I want to thank our listeners of the week. To become a listener of the week, support the podcast in some way. One of the ways you can do that is going to avrant.com, click on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and then that will send you to a PayPal donation site. You can also support us monthly by going to patreon.com/AVRantPodcast. There you can sign up to be a monthly contributor. Every month they'll take some money from you and give most of it to us. So right now we have 126 patrons. We want to thank each and every one of you.
That is right. Once again, that is patreon.com/AVRantPodcast if you'd like to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation. So a big thanks to our 126 patrons over there. Also, we will just shout out one more time. Jack, thanks for that offer to give away the Dayton OmniMic. That belongs in the listeners of the week, and we neglected to mention it last week, so we'll say it again here. Thank you.
Yes, Jack, I've not forgotten about you. We also got notes of gratitude for keeping the podcast going from Anonymous, Greg, Rob M., Mark, and Sasi. Thank you for thanking us.
That's right. We'll say those names one more time. We got Anonymous, Greg, Rob M., Mark, and Sasi. Thank you so much for the notes of gratitude and encouragement. We really appreciate them. A big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions. And for that last name, Sasi, as you can see if you've looked at the title of this episode, we're going to have a. I'm not going to call it a review. I'm probably going to say review in the title, but I don't really think it's a review. But as we've mentioned in the past, Sasi ordered a new Eigentakt Class D amplifier, but decided to have it shipped to me first to get my impressions. So those will be shared at the end of this podcast.
All right. Stay tuned for that. We do have a number of questions this week, which we might finally have gotten to the bottom of all the questions. I don't know.
More and more people are using ChatGPT, which means they will be returning to us once
very
they discover
soon. When they figure out that it's all wrong.
all the things that don't actually work the way ChatGPT says that they do.
I had a conversation with my kids the other day because my son said that his friend is no longer going into his dad's business because his dad, who's like in the upper echelons of executives at his company, says that his boss, who was the CEO, said if he ever quits or when he retires, he's going to replace him with AI.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I'm not going to go into that business because they're going to replace everybody with AI. I'm like, yeah, give it a year or two, my friend. That's not what's going to happen. AI it's unfortunately, the people who love AI and think AI is going to replace everything are the same people who don't know if AI is right or not. And they need to, it's going to take them a little while to figure that out. No, AI, I think the large language models, I think, have a use, and Definitely. They will have a use, but calling them AI is very, 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 I think deceptive. It's not what it is. It is not artificial intelligence. It's not intelligence.
I tend to want my computers to be deterministic. I don't want a different answer each time I ask the same question. I want the correct and the same answer every time.
You know, every once in a while we have this conversation where I say, oh, we finally gotten to the bottom of the questions, and it never pans out. And one of the reasons why we are having a light week this week is because it's for parts of this country and other parts of the world. This is when school, vacations are ending and school is beginning, and people's lives are getting uprooted a little bit. This also happens around Christmas or right after Christmas. We get a lot of a massive questions of, hey, I bought this new thing and it's not working right. How do I fix it? And then all of a sudden it goes dead while everybody's like playing with their new stuff and no longer asking questions. So if you're like, I've had this question and I've just never really wanted to get it. And this is one of those times where we're like, this is the time. Send it in. You'll get it answered next week, because that's kind of we're at this kind of dead end. At the bike shop, it's exactly the opposite. All summer here, because it's miserable out. It is literally miserable outside. It is so bad.
Oh dear.
It is so hot and so humid. It's miserable out there. But school's starting, so now people are like, oh my God, I need to get my bike fixed. Or I needed this, or I need
Rush.
that. And suddenly we went from being completely dead last week to this week. It's like somebody opened the faucet. So it's exactly the opposite there. Let's do some news, and then we'll get into that's a long thing. Some comments and then questions.
Yeah.
In the news today, MadVR is adding some new features to their NV series of external video processors. They're handling a frame-by-frame dynamic tone mapping, AI motion. Stop calling it AI. AI-driven motion interpolation, and nonlinear stretch. Stretch is all being updated. But there's also an entirely new feature, Dynamic Subtitle Overlay, or DSO.
Mm-hmm.
DSO. I don't know if I'm going to be calling it DSO because I don't see another DSO in here. But anyways, there's one down there.
Yeah.
All right. It's important to remember that MadVR video processor sits in the HDMI signal chain just before your display device, so it can only make changes to the HDMI video signal. That means it cannot alter the position, size, and brightness of subtitles the way a player can if the subtitles are a separate file. To the MadVR processor, it's as if all subtitles, oh my God, are baked in to the video signal.
Yeah.
So their old method of handling subtitles was to dynamically shrink the entire image so that the subtitles that fall into the black bars would still be visible if you're using something like a 2.35:1 aspect ratio screen. But that was obviously less than ideal. Dynamically shrink the entire image, the subtitles that fall into.
Yeah, so basically imagine you had a 2.35:1 screen. So if you if you had a 2.35:1 aspect ratio movie and you zoomed it in or used an anamorphic lens to fill your entire screen width, then if there are subtitles that fall into the black bar below, those would be literally invisible. They would drop off into the frame or the masking of your 2.35:1 screen, but they would shrink the image so that there is actually a little black bar at the bottom of your 2.35:1 screen.
And there must be black bars on the side too.
There could
right?
be, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So-
I read the words and I understood them, but at the same time I was like, that's not the solution I would have chosen.
It's less than ideal.
Yeah. So the new DSO processing starts by essentially cutting out a rectangle of the image that contains the subtitles and pasting it back onto the image in your desired location. But no one would want what literally looks like a cut and paste rectangle, so frame by frame, they are analyzing the text on the screen and all of the pixels around the text, and then processing the image so that it looks as though only the text has moved while backfilling all of the black bar area and the gaps in between the letters. In other words, it's real-time rotoscoping of just the subtitle text. Beyond moving the location of the text on the screen, this processing also allows them to change the size, brightness, and color of the text. They even offer an adaptive color option that changes the color of the subtitle text based on the overall color palette of whatever scene happens to be on screen at the time, which is exactly what you need, because if it's a white screen and you put white letters on it, you can't see
That's
anything.
right, yeah.
So, even if you're just using the 16:9 aspect ratio screen, you might appreciate being able to adjust the subtitle text size, how bright it is, the color of the text, and the opacity of the background behind the text. The least expensive, just $5,800, NV Core will not begin DSO, so suck it. But if you pay $1,300 more, rising to $1,500 more in mid-September, you can upgrade an NV Core, which is the $5,800 ones, to an NV Core Premium.
That's
the
right.
Premium will be getting DSO. The more expensive NV Pro Mark II, which is $9,500, and the NV Extreme.
Mm-hmm. I mean, what's beyond Pro? There's still no Ultimate. There's still no Omega. There's still no... There's lots of words we can use that will go beyond Extreme.
Please. Will someone buy these tech bros a thesaurus? Please, somebody buy them a thesaurus and just throw it at their face every time they put extreme in something. At least it starts with an E.
It does.
At least it starts with an E. But the only reason, Rob, is because NV also starts with an E. You know, if it didn't, it would start with an X.
I mean, it could have been an NV Elite. That's also an option.
It's coming. MV Extreme Mark II, which is $16,000, will also be getting DSO, of course, or whatever. I don't care anymore. I will. So mad. I'm so mad.
I mean, the thing is, where I appreciate this is that fewer and fewer of us are using physical discs.
Yeah.
Physical discs was the easiest place to at least be able to get a player that could move the subtitles at the player level, because most discs, the subtitles were a separate file. You had the video file, and then the subtitles were an overlay on top of that, a separate file. And many players that we had were able to give you the option to, physically adjust where the subtitles end up height-wise on the image, and some of them let you change the brightness or the color of those subtitles or the opacity of a background behind them, all of these sorts of features, but that relied on there being a separate subtitle file that the player could manipulate. More and more we're doing streaming where maybe the streaming player or the display that you're using just doesn't have those options for the subtitles. The subtitles are sometimes a separate file, but like we know that Netflix, for example, when you turn the subtitles on Netflix, they literally just change to a different stream.
Yeah.
On the fly, but they just change to a different stream. So it's not as though there's two separate files and you're optionally turning the subtitle file on and off. It's like, no, there's a version of this movie that we stream without subtitles and a version of this movie that we stream with subtitles. And you can use Netflix's own subtitle options, right? Because they usually let you change the size or the color, but very often they don't let you change the position, or maybe you want to change the opacity or some feature, some option that they don't give you in the streaming service, and there's no other way around that. The MadVR NV processors will be able to do that because it's the same. As far as they're concerned, the subtitles are the same no matter what. It's like baked in subtitles that are just part of the video signal, no matter what in its situation. So it's doing this essentially frame by frame rotoscoping of the subtitle text, and then being able to manipulate that in all these ways. So yeah, I like that. If subtitles are really top priority, and it's becoming a bigger priority for more and more people, not even folks who are hard of hearing or deaf. It's like a lot of people like to have the subtitles on. So I can see this being an appreciated feature. At least I think it's more valuable than a lot of the other stuff that the MadVRs do.
I will agree with that. We were at my parents' house the other day, and my wife and mom were talking in the kitchen area, and we were in the TV area. Watching a football game, and my dad ended up muting the sound on the football game because he couldn't hear either one. Yeah. The conversation was happening, and you couldn't help but hear it because everything in the house was reflective, and you couldn't hear the TV because it wasn't loud enough, because the louder you put the TV, the louder they talk. So he ended up muting the TV, and I'm just like, if you were just a little bit less resistant to putting some sort of acoustic treatment in this house somewhere, you would not be in this situation. You would be able to hear in this room. Yep. And I mean, that's the same fight I'm going to have in that big open room in the other house too. Yeah. We're going to be still dealing with that, but I am going to, try and figure out ways to make that happen. Yeah. So we'll see how it works out, but subtitles are a terrible solution for the problem of I can't understand what's being said on the TV. But it is a problem, and this is one of those things that you're like, man, if they could just make that and not have to have it tied to a $5,800 device that nobody's going to buy.
Well, $7,100 because the $5,800 one doesn't get it. You have to upgrade it to the premium, and it'll be what'll it be, $7,300 after mid-September, because the price for the premium upgrade is going up September 15th. So you've been warned. Get in there early if you really, really, really want this and have multiple thousands of dollars to spend on it.
Yeah, or you can spend a fraction of that on room treatments, and then you can hear what's on the TV.
I mean, the other option is to just use a 16:9 screen. But there are definitely times where I'm watching something and I'm like, those subtitles are too bright. It is nice to be able to turn that down. I'm not sure I would pay $7,300 to dim subtitles, but you never know.
Yeah. Microsoft has, completely without warning, shut down its movie and TV online store. In other news, Microsoft has a movie and TV online store that I did not know existed. So here we go. I did not know this. This is so that, them shutting down does not affect my life. Microsoft first began selling movies and TV shows online in 2006 under their Zune branding. Remember the Zune?
I do remember the Zune.
Well, that is apparently a very good box that nobody bought because it was brown, I guess.
Most younger folks who know about the Zune know about it from Guardians of the Galaxy. So.
That's true. In 2012, it was renamed Xbox Video ahead of the launch of the Xbox One, and it was rebranded again in 2015 to Microsoft Movies and TV. It was basically their version of iTunes. Didn't know it existed, where you could buy individual movies and shows as opposed to being any sort of subscription. But now suddenly it's gone. You can't make any more purchases from Microsoft Movies and TV, and the support page simply reads, Microsoft no longer offers new entertainment content for purchase, including movies and TV shows on Microsoft.com, Microsoft Store on Windows, and the Microsoft Store on Xbox.
Yeah,
end quote.
That's it. We no longer do it.
Yeah.
Statement of fact.
They're saying you can still access and watch the content you've already purchased, but only via Xbox One, Xbox Series, whatever, or on a Windows device. No other apps work anymore, including the Xbox 360 version, which was actually already shut down last year, but nobody knows because it doesn't really exist. So there won't be any refunds.
Yeah.
Duh. And it's unknown how long the Xbox and Windows apps will continue to let you watch what you've already bought. You can download your purchases on the Windows computer, but only up to 1080p resolution. Your 4K purchase cannot be downloaded in their higher resolution form. So apparently, suck it.
Yeah.
That's that.
Yeah. So, naturally you had the physical media fans out in force in the comment sections of anywhere that was reporting this. See, this is what happens when you buy your movies digitally. Now, the thing is, on a technical level, there is no reason why Apple one day couldn't pull this same thing. We don't expect them to, but...
We didn't expect Microsoft to do it either. So
Exactly. And they are on a server somewhere because, again, like watching current Apple movies, most of the time you're not actually downloading the entire file and playing it offline. You are in effect streaming it. It's not quite the same as a subscription streaming service in that you what you bought was a license to view that movie on their service. That's what you bought. You didn't buy the movie. You didn't buy a copy of the movie. You bought a license to view the movie on their service. So, that was in the terms and service of Microsoft's store all along as well. And now they are exercising the part of the clause that says, hey, if it goes away, it goes away. So I don't know how long they'll keep those servers going for you to continue streaming stuff that you purchased a license to view on their service. But yeah, with a bunch of apps shut down, limited in the ways you can do that. Definitely if you've got some where that's the only version that you ever purchased, even though it's limited to 1080p and obviously not HDR, standard dynamic range and 1080p resolution, downloading that onto a Windows computer, which is your only option for getting it off of their servers, is the thing you're going to want to do. Very unfortunate.
That is unfortunate. Yeah. Comments. Greg. First up, Greg is the owner of a BACCH 3D audio processor, and he's a fan. But even he had to admit that the $5,000 Canvas hi-fi soundbar that Sasi brought up last week seems like a tough sell.
That was a misspeak. He didn't buy it, but he brought it up last week. Yeah.
He brought it up.
Yeah.
Yes. I thought I said that, but maybe I didn't.
You did correct
There
yourself.
are versions of the BACCH 3D audio processors that allow for individualized head-related transfer functions, or HRTF, measurements to be used, and for head tracking using a camera or a sensor mounted on headphones for the headphone version, but the soundbar doesn't include any of that. So it explains why it costs less, but he also imagined it won't sound nearly as impressive. We've talked about how the BACCH 3D audio 3D processing only really works for a single listener, but they do have a version called BACCH-X that can utilize 7 or more speakers to create personalized listening zones for multiple listeners, all in the same room. They specifically mentioned how a multi-driver BACCH soundbar could allow for as much as a 30 dB difference for two people sitting right next to each other. But the Canvas hi-fi soundbar doesn't have that.
No.
So he ultimately agrees it would probably make sense to actually price a BACCH 3D soundbar even higher than $5,000, but it should include BACCH-X so that it would actually be impressive sounding. If you're wondering why I keep saying it that way, it's got 2 C's.
BACCH. And yeah, you didn't even emphasize the X. You gotta hit the BACCH-X. That's the version you really want for. I mean, yeah. How many setups is you added a soundbar to a television and then you are the only listener ever in there? I mean, yes, that is plenty of times, but like
that happens.
You know, if you're buying the soundbar for a TV setup, isn't it kind of that you're picturing a living room setup where from time to time, at least, there might be more than one listener of this thing? So
I don't know. If you've got $5,000 to spend on a soundbar, maybe you are single.
But doesn't this also sound very reminiscent of Yamaha's,
digital
sound
signal
projectors?
processor, DSP projectors, yeah.
Because that had the thing where, they had oodles of drive. Like, this is talking about seven speakers or more. I mean, they do 7 plus, but, 7 at a minimum. Yeah. Like, those digital sound projectors that Yamaha had back in the day, they had
dozens.
Like 30 or 40 little drivers. But it was genuine. They were actually beamforming. That was real.
Yeah.
Like, you could,
that was real.
You could measure it very clearly that they were intentionally creating constructive and destructive interference wave patterns, so that if you were sitting in one of those destructive wave zones, you were hearing next to nothing. And then you move over like a foot and a half, 2 feet, and all of a sudden it's playing very, very loudly. And it was kind of magical to experience with those Yamaha digital sound projectors. I haven't really seen those available for a while. Like, Yamaha should bring that back. They were kind of ahead of the curve in having weren't they like $1,700 the top end digital sound projectors?
Yeah, they weren't. They may have topped 20, like up to 2,500, I think,
something around there.
But they were not. They were not more than that. That's for sure.
But they were kind of too early in that market. Like, most people were saying that's just way too expensive for a thing that looks like a soundbar. Like, even if it can do more, you're not really going to be able to totally understand what it does in a store demo.
Honestly, Yamaha should rebadge them and bring them back.
They should absolutely bring it back. The market is ready for it now. Yeah. So Yamaha, if you're listening, you've got to be listening to AVRant. Why wouldn't Yamaha representatives be listening?
Wouldn't you? Let's be honest.
Bring back your digital sound projectors. The market is finally ready for what you have.
We have our pulse on the our finger on the pulse of the AV industry. If anybody does, it's us.
That's right. Yeah.
The people who constantly tell people not to buy things. You don't need an amp. Why buy a processor when you can get an AV receiver?
Dear.
Second, Greg managed to find himself a killer deal on a 97-inch OLED. It was for an open box LG M3 at a Best Buy 150 miles away. He figured it was probably a floor model with oodles of hours on it, but it actually only had 49 hours of use with no issues at all with the panel. Dead pixels are obvious banding.
Yeah.
So he basically took up his entire weekend, first moving the 98-inch TV TCL out of his room, and then driving 150 miles each way and carefully bringing the 97-inch OLED into his house. But he wound up paying, drum roll please, $3,000 plus tax for the TV.
I mean, gas on top of that, but hey,
I was going to say, and another $200 in gas.
I mean, that was when that M3 came out. It was $25,000.
That's crazy.
The MSRP was $25,000. I have never ever seen any of the 97-inch OLEDs priced at $3,000. I don't know what was going on there. Somebody forgot to put a 1 in front of that 3. That's what happened.
And it still comes with a warranty. This Best Buy location was apparently just looking to get this massive TV out of their storage as quickly as possible, and he happened to luck out and be the benefactor.
Yeah.
So now that he's had a look at it in his own place, it is dimmer than the 98-inch TCL. The TCL was capable of getting painfully bright and audibly buzzing whenever it did so, but the perfect black level, zero blooming, and perfect pixel-by-pixel contrast more than make up for it, in his opinion. It just looks right. Not that he was ever unhappy with the TCL's image, but this is really as close to his dream TV as he can ever imagine getting. Also, using the M3's Zero Connect box is a little bit different, awkward, but it seems to work perfectly fine. Yeah. So I guess it's got an external box, whatever. This reminds me of Headroom. So it's like the TCL is like can get so much brighter, and he's like, yes, it can. It could definitely get brighter.
Objectively so. I mean, every measurement, every review we've ever seen, and his own personal experience is like, if you just want to sear your eyeballs, the TCL is capable of putting out more nits than the OLED. That is objectively
true. Just like when people are like, oh, you got to get a bigger amp, or I want a bigger subwoofer for my itty bitty tiny room. You put it all together, you're like, yeah, but that would not be pleasant to experience,
right.
And therefore, why would you'll turn it down? So you won't have, you're paying for the ability not to turn it up as loud as you might want it. This is headroom that people talk about all the time. That's as a thing people need. This is the same sort of thing where he's like, yes, this TCL can get brighter, but painfully bright. Why would you need this to be painfully bright when you can get it just bright enough?
That's not an exaggeration. Like, I've seen that. It's like you got to squint. Like, if you turn it up to its maximum brightness, and we're not talking about some weird kind of service menu adjustment, like just in the regular using controls, you turn the brightness all the way up as high as it goes, which is an easy thing to do. It's like, you're squinting to look at that thing.
Right. Okay. Let's get some questions in here. Christian asks, is there a specific TV model we would say is best for an outdoor setup? Christian wants to have a TV out on his patio. It has a roof, so the TV won't be totally exposed or anything. There's virtually no risk of any rain falling directly onto the TV, but despite it being a covered deck, he still gets quite a bit of glare from the sun on his patio, so that will likely be an issue for any TV he uses out there. What do we recommend? Rob has a ton of recommendations, and I have no coffee, so let's let Rob answer this question while I get coffee.
I'm not quite sure that it's literally a ton of recommendations because it's just I'm including the links for 3 different specific models, but all from one brand, which is Hisense. If you are talking about putting a TV on a covered patio, so I'm sure you're aware there are the SunBright TVs, or Samsung has the Terrace that they have that are specifically made to be all year round outdoor TVs, IP, some rating for dust and water resistance. So genuinely outdoor TVs, but they are much, much more expensive than your regular consumer televisions. And if you are on a covered patio situation where at least you're not going to have direct rain falling on it, you've got a little bit of protection from, stuff coming from overhead, some protection from wind, at least from some directions, because you're up against the house on one side. Using one of those truly dedicated multi-thousands of dollars outdoor TVs. You've heard about this on other podcasts or read about it on other websites. It's like the regular television, indoor TV, maybe it won't last as long. I wouldn't expect it to last 10 or 15 years in those outdoor conditions. One thing that can definitely help prolong it is that when it's not in use, maybe you're not literally taking it off of, wherever you have it outside and bringing it inside the house, but just putting on one of the covers, right? It's typically just a canvas cover that you can drape over the television, maybe has a little zipper to close it up. Just doing that when you're not actually using it can definitely prolong the life of a regular TV, and you're in a condition where it's not, direct rainfall coming on this thing. So getting an indoor TV and getting one from a brand like Hisense where it's a lot of bang for your buck and the price is not crazy high, it's like even if you end up replacing it every 5 years, you come out way ahead price-wise. If you bought 3 of them in 15 years versus one of the dedicated outdoor TVs in 15 years, you're still way ahead on price. So I go to Hisense here largely because of price, but also because they go for sheer light output. If you want a brand that in general is just let's give you as many nits as we possibly can, then Hisense is the one to go for. So if you're going for the brand new models that just came out in 2025, I'm probably going to point you to the U7 series. It would be the U75QG is the exact series right now. It's available in 55, 65, 75, 85, and 100 inches. And the prices on those are not bad at all. $740, $1,000, $1,300, $1,800, and $3,000 for the 100 inch. Those prices respectively to their sizes. So there is the even brighter, even higher end U8 QG series that just came out. So you're looking at prices of $880, $1,180 for some reason, $1,900, $2,400, and $4,500 for those same 55, 65, 75, 85, and 100-inch screen sizes. But the U7 series to me is sort of the bang for buck. It's not quite as bright as the U8, but I feel kind of weird about putting a virtually flagship level for the brand U8 series outdoors. It's not entirely necessary. It's not so much brighter. But if you're also looking at, say, the 65-inch size where you're talking a less than $200 difference, maybe you're like, hey, yeah, I'll go for the U8. I'll get as many nits as I possibly can. Now, the knock against the Hisenses has been that they aren't the absolute most accurate, and particularly in HDR, they tend to over-brighten things. But in an outdoor setting, I don't mind HDR being over-brightened. That's probably going to be a benefit. So the last thing you do is you could still find last year's U8s, the Hisense U8N series, and they're actually priced really, really similarly to the brand new 2025 U7 series. In fact, in some cases, they're a little bit less expensive for the U8N, so you could definitely look out for those. Last year's U7N seems to be very hard to find at this point, and it actually was a big jump to the U75 QG series this year in terms of brightness. They're kind of closer to last year's U8N, so it makes sense that they're priced very similarly. So yeah, get yourself a Hisense, U7 at the lowest, a U8 at the highest, and I think you'll be very happy using that outdoors.
All right, Anonymous. Anonymous has continued using a Harmony One remote, but its usefulness seems to be decreasing as time goes on. The newest Google TV streaming device cannot be controlled by the IR-only Harmony One, nor can the cloudy-based smart lights that are primarily controlled over Wi-Fi using a smartphone app, but can also have their basic functions controlled via a wireless remote. The Harmony One is still able to control several other pieces of equipment, but the whole idea was to have a single remote in hand that can control everything, and that's no longer the case. It's back to the cumbersome experience of having to switch between multiple remotes and apps. So is there a singular remote or a single iPhone app that can truly control everything? Sofa Baton is the only thing out there that is... it is the only Harmony replacement that exists, and everything else is going to end up being some sort of like Z-Wave or something like that.
The folded circle people are going to yell at us, but I'm like, when every product you release is perpetually up for pre-order and there's like 10 YouTubers who talk about having it, but you can't find any real people, I don't really see folded circle as a truly viable option. Okay. So here's the thing. We've been waiting on this. We know it's coming, but the Sofa Baton X2, which is going to have a touch screen on it, and form factor wise is going to be really quite reminiscent of the Harmony One that you're already used to. Not quite as many hard buttons on the Sofa Baton X2 as your Harmony One remote, but because it'll have that touch screen, it's very reminiscent. The thing is, we don't know exactly when that X2 is actually going to be available from Sofa Baton at this point. I still believe it will be out before the end of this year, but they did originally say it was going to be like April of this year, and it's just kept getting pushed back and push back and push back, and now they're saying November, but who knows if that is actually going to happen. So it's kind of hard to say, hey, go get an X2 or even wait for one, because we don't know for sure that it's actually going to be coming out. So you definitely can purchase right now a Sofa Baton X1S, and I have a few quibbles with it. The way that you control things there is, so we know you have a Harmony, so we know you're familiar with, you have hard buttons at the bottom, which get controlled, reprogrammed on a device or an activity basis, and then you have a screen at the top, and with your Harmony One, it's a touch screen. With the Sofa Baton X1S, it is not a touch screen. To control whatever you're seeing on the screen at the top of the X1S remote, you have a little thumb wheel. So that thumb wheel just scrolls up and down, and then you can click it in to activate. So you're just literally choosing from a vertical list of things on the screen at the top of the X1S, and then clicking that scroll wheel button to choose it. That's not the end of the world, but even after I've been using an X1, not an X1S, but I've been using an X1 for years, and once in a while I still end up clicking the up, down, left, right button controls while I'm looking at the screen. I'm like, oh yeah, the wheel is the thing that controls the screen. So even I still haven't formed the muscle memory after a couple of years of using the thing. And then the thing I dislike the most, just physically, is that you're familiar with. You've been using one activity for a little while. Now you want to change to a different activity. So on your Harmony One, you press the little touchscreen activities button. You get your list of activities and you choose your activity. It's similar on the Sofa Baton X1S in that you set up activities just like a Harmony did, and you'll have a list of activities. But to just get to that list of activities, say you're already active in your watch TV activity, you have to press the back button for the screen on the Sofa Baton X1S just to go back to your list of activities, and then use the scroll wheel to choose and click the scroll wheel button to choose the next activity. The back button that controls the screen is at the very top right corner of the remote, and it's just physically awkward up there. You pretty much have to do a two-handed operation of holding it with one hand and clicking that back button with the other hand. It's not a nice physical feel to clicking that back button, so I don't particularly love that, but it's certainly not the end of the world. So the bigger drawback that I have to mention is that so far, sounds like things that you could probably get past usability-wise. And the Sofa Baton X1S, it has a hub. So your Harmony 1 was IR only, it didn't have a hum. There was the Harmony 900, which had the exact same form factor as your Harmony 1, but then it did have a hub, so it wasn't IR only. You could also control things via Bluetooth and limited Wi-Fi. So the X1S also has a hub, and there actually is nothing that comes out of the X1S remote that you hold in your hand that doesn't control anything directly. The only thing the wand in your hand does is talk to the hub. So IR commands, Bluetooth commands, Wi-Fi commands, all of that comes out of the hub. And then it also has little IR blaster extenders, like the Harmony hubs did. So if you've got it inside of a cabinet, or you have a device that's in a cabinet but the hub is on top of things, you can use the little IR extender to reach everything if you need IR control. Out of the box, if you're just using the Sofa Baton app, which is the only way to program the Sofa Baton remotes, there is a limited number of Bluetooth devices and a very limited number of Wi-Fi devices that it can control. Wi-Fi wise, it's only set up to control Sonos, Roku, and Philips Hue smart lighting. Nothing else out of the box.
Right.
So when you're talking about you've got Cloudy Bay lights and they're predominantly controlled via Wi-Fi, it is not intuitive to do that straight out of the box. It's not as simple as go to my list of Wi-Fi devices. Cloudy Bay is going to be one of the options. Unfortunately, I wish it were. And at some point, maybe Sofa Baton will add it to it. They are continuously updating their database. They really are responding to customer requests and that. So it's not out of the question that Cloudy Bay could get added at some point in the future, but it's just not there right now. And then the option of controlling those lights via Bluetooth, it's also not in their list of Bluetooth devices that you can just intuitively set up and program. So there is a workaround. And honestly, it's more than I would feel comfortable doing. So I don't know your level of technical proficiency with entering sort of, programming type language into things.
Right.
It's not something I couldn't ever learn to do. It's just I would have to be looking at instructions and I would have to be copying and pasting the actual text code-like commands, because there is the option on the Sofa Baton X1S, if you go into that Wi-Fi section, there's a link for it to do manual IP-based control. And it's literally, like I said, it'll be like an HTTP address. It'll be an IP address for whatever is on your Wi-Fi network that you want to control. And then it's a string of letters and numbers. Some of it is kind of intuitive, like, there might be the word living room in there because you've set up one of your rooms as living room, and there might be the word, white or 6500 for choosing your temperature and that, but it's kind of like, it's got the percentage signs and the greater than, less than, so like that programming language type of look to it, which is why it'd be something I would want to copy and paste off of sites to do it. But it is possible on a Sofa Baton X1S to basically manually program and control anything that connects to Wi-Fi on your network. Like it's a thing that can be done. I just don't know how comfortable you would be doing it. But if you want a physical wand, remote in your hand that can do the things that you're talking about, the Sofa Baton X1S can do it. It just might not be the most intuitive to program. So then as far as apps goes, like, it's gonna be something like the Roomy remote. which again, it's like, the setup of that is not quite as user-friendly as like you were used to with a Harmony. Now, maybe you're really proficient. Maybe that's no problem for you. But, Roomy Remote would be the app to look at. Like, that's one where you can have a look at it. You can browse around the forums. You can sort of suss out for yourself whether it's the type of thing that you feel comfortable doing. But that's the two that I'm aware of, where I would point you first. You can have a look at it. And I'll have a link to, it's like an hour-long video that goes through a guy doing an example of him setting up his own home smart lighting using a Sofa Baton X1S, that it is not set up to do natively out of the box, but he programs it all himself. So you can get an idea if that's something you want to venture into.
Yeah. Rip Harmony still.
I know, right?
That's what it comes down
Stuff
to.
was so much easier. And why won't anyone buy that from Logitech and take it off their hand? I mean,
they're
I know
not selling.
why.
Would be my guess.
Yeah, and
not
also
selling.
there's no profit margin in it for a company that does buy it off of them. It's a tough sell, but I wish someone were altruistic out there instead of profit driven.
Rob M. Rob is a friend who runs a sports bar. It's noticeably echoey in there, so to the point it is actually a turnoff for some folks who might otherwise enjoy going. Rob was telling him he should glue some sound insulation panels to the ceiling and cover them with some black fabric, but he couldn't recall the exact name of the brand and type of insulation that would work well in that sort of installation. Something that begins with the letter C, he thinks?
That's
maybe?
what rang a bell in his head.
Yeah.
Apparently, ChatGPT
he was thinking
didn't
insulation. He was thinking of insulation panels that are hard, definitely not the pink stuff, and not as soft as the Rockwool insulation either. Do we know the type of brand, the brand and type of insulation he's thinking of? It will do and will it do the trick for his friend's sports bar? I mean, the Rockwool, the Rockwool, and the
I don't know what you're trying to think of.
Falling out of my mind. The
I was going to mention Owens Corning because that's the one.
Yes, Corning.
And I do
those
believe
are the same though. Those are the same like thickness, hardness, if you will.
Well, I mean, there are different versions. So I am pretty sure that the C he was thinking of was actually Corning in Owens Corning. I emailed him quickly and he was like, yep, that sounds about right. Okay. And then there's the two that we see most common.
Fiberglass.
Yes. Oh, you were just trying to think of the word.
That was the word I was trying to think of, and my brain would just shut down.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
There's the two specific Owens Corning like numbered models of insulation that you see all the time, and you can buy it from places like Acoustimac or GIC or other places that sell the DIY materials. So there's Owens Corning 703 and Owens Corning 705. And they have other ones too, but the 703 and the 705 are the ones that you see all the time for acoustic panel purposes. Now, the Owens Corning 703, they list it as semi-rigid. So I think when you're thinking of what's the hard, quote-unquote hard insulation, I think it was the word rigid that was probably in your mind. And
probably.
Very easily got changed to, hard. But yeah, 703 is considered semi-rigid, and it physically feels very similar to Rockwool insulation. And what I'd like to say about that type of insulation, whether it's the semi-rigid fiberglass Owens Corning 703 or the Rockwool insulation, is that, those never sag. If they were inside your wall, we've all seen where you have that pink stuff insulation or the even cheaper white, fluffy insulation. And sometimes you open up a wall and over the years, all of that stuff is sagged down and there's actually like a gap at the top of the bay of your wall and the rest of it is sagged down and compressed. Well, the Rockwool and the Owens Corning 703 will never sag. They are semi-rigid enough that they absolutely hold their shape forever and ever. And then they're the semi-rigid where, like, if you just pushed your hand into it, they absolutely give. They're compliant and squishy. They come in a package where it's compressed, and when you cut open the package, they expand, much bigger than the package you bought them. But you can push your hand into it, and then it doesn't, like, bounce back out instantly. It kind of slowly fills back out, but it comes back to its original shape. The Rockwool does and the 703 does. There is the Owens Corning 705 that they just outright call rigid fiberglass, which I think is a bit of a misnomer because it still has some give to it. The 705 still has some give, but it's to the point where if you poked a finger into some 705, it would not expand back out to its original shape. Like, you would leave a dent if you just poked a finger into the 705. So that's why calling it rigid kind of makes sense, because it's like, it's not compliant. It has give to it, so you could kind of like lightly push your hand into it and it'll bounce back. So that's why it's not like truly rigid, but you can make a dent in the 705. So in a way, you need to be more careful with the 705 than you do with the 703 or the Rockwell, because the Rockwell or the 703, you can kind of push your hand and it bounces back.
Why did I think that the 703 and the 705 were about thickness as well, though?
It's density. Density.
Yeah. Oh, density. That's what I'm thinking.
The 705 is denser, but yeah, like I said, you can kind of permanently dent the 705. So there is insulation that is truly rigid. It's the stuff that you would like put on a basement foundation and then put plywood on top of it and walk on it. But that stuff is basically styrofoam. Like it's a slightly different formulation than bog standard styrofoam, but that's essentially what it is. And you would not want to use that for acoustic insulation. That is just an acoustic reflector. Imagine just a hard piece of styrofoam. That is not absorbing sound waves. It's just reflecting them. So truly hard insulation absolutely exists. It's a great thermal break, but it would not be the styrofoam hardness style would not be what I would use. So I'm trying to figure out why something that's going on the ceiling of a sports bar.
Has to be this, yes.
Like who's touching it? Who's pushing into it? Like maybe he was just thinking he wants to be able to glue it up there, so he doesn't want something like Rockwell, which, glue isn't really going to hold it to the ceiling. It's gonna pull away from that. But there are other ways of fastening insulation to the ceiling. In fact, I would probably not want to use glue to the ceiling, right?
No, I mean, no.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of, like you said, there's a lot of ways to do it. And they're like, I can't, what's the big name of the company that used to make all the really expensive insulation panels that before GIC and everybody else came out? I just can't. I was just Googling it, trying to figure out the name of that company.
Like I know PMI, which is Anthony Gramani's company, but I don't think that's the one you're talking about. Oralex?
Oralex.
Okay.
Oralex used to take like a rigid fiberglass board, and they would treat the edges, and the back, so that you could you grab it basically and hang it and do everything you want with it, and it wouldn't feel quite as compliant like what Rob's talking about here, and I think what you're talking about. But there were. That treatment, whatever they did to it, and then they covered it with fabric, was a lot more expensive. I wish I knew what exactly what this place looked like. Because a lot of times, basically what you need are panels that are created in one way or another. Even the GIC stuff that you could get that, where it's like a DIY, you assemble it yourself and just hang it from the ceiling. Yeah. Even if you hang it from the ceiling by putting little L brackets up there and just,
that can be the easiest way. Yeah.
Putting it behind the bar. A lot of times there's a wall there that's mirrored sometimes, but a wall there that has stuff hanging. Shelves or whatever. Around those shelves, you could put stuff like that there. Any sort of flat surface where reflections can go.
And this is a scenario where I would not be opposed to using 2-inch thick panels.
Yes.
Because we're primarily worried about the vocal region for here. Now, look, it's a sports bar. You probably have music playing in there from time to time.
But you're never going to have enough bass absorption anyway.
It could be beneficial to go thicker, but particularly if you're hanging something from the ceiling, like if you just put some L brackets on the ceiling, and here, like 705 would be a great choice because it is like very close to being rigid. L brackets are going to hold it absolutely fine. You don't have to do any more securement than just L brackets, but you could easily have like an L bracket that's 3.5 or 4 inches long down from the ceiling. 2-inch thick 705 goes in there with a 2 inches of air gap behind it. That's actually going to work really well acoustically in this type of setting. So that could be a very inexpensive, very simple way to do it. So, that would be the way I would maybe come at this.
Yeah. I mean, you can, like from GIC, you can buy the whatever fabric or whatever, but I don't even think that's necessary.
Oh no, I mean, in this scenario, I would just go like a black speaker grill cloth because it's going on the ceiling, so just cover it in black speaker grill cloth. Cheap stuff and will work very well.
Yeah. I am looking at GIC and I got distracted. Jonathan, Jonathan says he has no interest in going back to vinyl, but he did come across a new vertical turntable that piqued his interest, if nothing else. The Dutch company, I have no chance of this. Miniot?
I mean,
Miniot?
it looks like just Miniot, but it's probably pronounced differently, it's spelled as Miniot.
Yeah. It's taking pre-orders for their Wheel 3 light-based turntable. I am going to click on that.
Yep.
Hold on.
You got to see an
clicked
image.
on it. And is there another image? Oh, there's four images.
There's
of
some
this
images
thing. Are you showing the images?
I'm showing some images. I mean, I've got the first one up there, so you can
Oh,
have a
I
look at
see.
this thing, yes.
Well, that's dumb. Anyways, sorry. Each unit is handmade and is selling for $3,457. 3,457. Really?
I mean, it's that is the U.S. The exchange rate. You can choose U.S. dollars on their website, so they're going by euro.
The pure aluminum platter can be laid flat like a traditional turntable, but why would you ever do that when it can also stand vertically on its optional stand, or even be hung on a wall? Despite using an optical pickup, there is still a physical diamond-tipped stylus that moves linearly from the outer edge to the middle. Rather than being a moving magnet or a moving coil, the stylus's tiny movements are tracked optically, which Miniot says allows them to track the frequency response on your vinyl all the way down to 0 hertz.
It was super intentional. Everybody who's ever pressed a vinyl has been like, we've got to have 0 hertz response on this vinyl record. They were absolutely mastering and playing that back intentionally. You gotta know it.
I think I hear one. I hear a hurt.
It wasn't accidental noise that could be on a vinyl record, and now you're playing back in an amplified manner. Yeah.
The record spins on a direct drive mechanism that is programmed to work hand in hand with the linear stylus mechanism, so perfect speed of the playback is maintained. The rear has the mounted hook for wall mounting at the top, and then a power plug input and a 3.5 millimeter stereo jack, because that's definitely what somebody who's going to spend almost $4,000 on a freaking
it's the only output.
The only output is 3.5 millimeters.
Yep.
How hard does it grab it? Because they're going to want to put like a garden hose thing coming out of this thing to let all the data through. So you must use the bespoke built-in preamplifier. Boy, they know their audience. They know their consumers, Rob.
They do not. That is such the wrong choice for them to have done.
What do we think? Would having the Miniot Wheel 3 hanging on your wall be enough of a pure cool factor to entice either of us back into vinyl? This is the dumbest. Where is the stylus, though? Is it on the back side?
So if you see the record...
Oh, is it that black thing that's going up the middle?
There's a black strip, which is like a track that the stylus goes up and down on that black strip. So it's not like a stylus arm, right?
Yeah.
It's a black strip. It just tracks vertically up and down. So it's direct drive for the spinning of the record. So that all has to work hand in hand. So that, because of course, as you go closer and closer to the center of the record, it would be speeding up, right? If it's just a completely linear track stylus, so they have to direct drive the speed of the record. It's just not holding the speed at a constant 45 RPM or 33 RPM or whatever you're playing back on this thing. So actually, I don't know. I didn't look up the compatibility if it can play 45s or not. Maybe not. But yeah, no, it doesn't take this to like
for $3,457, I will come and hang a record on your wall for you. I will hang 2.
Also,
all right?
I am curious.
A 2 for 1. That's.
I am curious how the hanging on the wall actually works, because when it's on its stand, it's like it's sort of vertical, but it's raked back because you are putting a vinyl record on this thing, which is spinning, so it can't literally be vertical because it's going to pull away from the surface. So it has to have some lean back.
Well, that black. It looks like there's a black ring in the center, and that must hold it on, like push down on it somehow,
maybe
magnetically. Probably with neodymium magnets. There
are neodymium magnets. They mentioned
of course there are
several, couple dozen.
Of course there are,
Rob.
involved. Don't be stupid.
Yes.
I like how both the cables look exactly the same.
Yeah.
Like there's two cables coming out of this thing. One clearly has got to be the power one.
It is the
and
one on the left.
That top thing is for hanging it.
The top thing is for hanging it. That is the hook for hanging it.
That
on
looks
the
like the least intuitive way to hang something I've ever seen.
And don't hang it by the other two, because one is your power cable and one is your 3.5 millimeter stereo analog output. You know, the highest quality analog connection that one could ever hope for. It's a slightly strange choice. So yes, obviously this is a curio. This is just doing it for.
They're going to sell one.
A little bit of clout.
Oh,
I don't know about that. There's going to be some influencer who's going to show it, and a bunch of people are going to be like, "I've got to have that," because that's how everything works these days. So I handmade though. They did mention that if you don't like the composite black material on the back of this thing, that they are planning to have a special edition, which is handmade from wood. So very important.
The wood will make it warmer.
It's gonna sound better. Gonna be chocolatier. But yeah, honestly, we're poking a little bit of fun at this thing, but it absolutely does not take this to potentially convince me to have a record player in my setup. I wouldn't mind. I mean, my dad has a whole collection of vinyls, some of which never came out on CDs. It was just never made available digitally, or it's just nostalgia. It's records, that I grew up listening to when I was a kid the entire time. I'm going to inherit those one days, and I don't plan to get rid of them. But I'm going to have an Audio-Technica record player. I mean, that's what I'm going to do. It's going to cost about $400, and it's going to play those records back fantastically well. That's, so it doesn't take a lot to convince me to have a record player. I'm not against it. So yeah, it doesn't have to be a $3,500 vertical one.
Against it.
Yeah.
I would just have to have someone give one to me along with records, because that's what it would take, because I'm not buying one and I'm not buying records. And I pass by a record shop all the time. Mm-hmm. It's a very big record shop. It's called Banana something. I don't remember what it is. Look it up in St. Pete, Banana something. Anyways, they're very big, I think. And they've been there for a long time, I guess. And I have no interest in ever entering that store.
Okay.
I must drive by it almost daily. Because it's on the way to Sam's. And I go to Sam's a lot. It's also on the way to my friend's house that I cycle with. And I'm just not going to do it.
Okay.
Mark writes, thanks again for your help last week with diagnosing the amplifier issue on my Proceed HPA3. I realized I forgot to mention the specific power conditioner I use. It's a Furman IT Reference 20i, which is a pretty stout unit. All the main gear, amplifier, preamp, and sources are plugged into it. That said, as Tom suggested, there are definitely devices that are not powered through the conditioner, but still interface with the system through signal connections. Mm-hmm.
So this question here, I actually just copy and pasted straight from the email. I didn't rewrite, mainly for time issues, but it was also completely written in a way where I'm like, yeah, we can just read that exactly as is. So if you're wondering why sometimes the pronouns are in the first person perspective, it's because I just left it exactly the way it was written by Mark.
All right. So again, from Mark's mouth here. I was hoping we could go a bit deeper into the amplifier discussion, looking at options, comparing designs, and weighing the pros and cons of various upgrade paths. As I mentioned earlier, my current Proceed amps are hefty and built around monaural modules. Mono, basically. Modules. Each channel is a self-contained unit, heatsink, board, etc. that slides into a chassis rail connected into a large transformer and capacitor bank. Mm-hmm. Each module weighs around 10 pounds, and the bulk of the chassis weight is in the transformer and power supply.
120 pounds.
That's ridiculous.
You got 30 pounds of amplifier modules, according to what he just said there. So the other 90 pounds is the chassis, the transformer, and the power supply. But yeah,
the lights in your neighborhood dim when you power this thing on.
This is fairly similar design to like how ATI builds their amplifiers, how Emotiva builds their amplifiers. They have these sort of blade channels for each of the individual amplifier channels, and then a common power supply and capacitor bank. Yeah.
So Mark was honestly surprised that Canadian Rob dismissed the Anthem MCA 325 Gen 2 so quickly, and that both of you suggested keeping the 2-channel HPA amp. I expected you to recommend replacing both, especially given the age and the known long-term failure rates of these units. When I sent my HPA3 in for service, I only set the failed module, not the entire amp. That might be another problem right there.
Yeah, so that whole thing I mentioned about, so the one the channel that he sent in for repair, and now it's buzzing. And I was like, yeah, that's typically a misalignment issue. So that makes me wonder if you could actually like remove, because apparently you took it out and put it in yourself. Yeah. If you could remove it and basically reseat that module, because it sounds like it's a simple physical misalignment. I mean that happened with my ATI amplifier, which was probably just shipping jostling that accidentally did that. And ATI was very perturbed that one of their amps was buzzing. They're like, no, our amps do not buzz. So they wanted to fix that for sure. But yeah, it was just simple misalignment. So that increases my suspicion that's really all that's going on there. But then he also had the other amplifier channel in that same amp that just completely has gone silent at this point. So it sounds like that module at the very least would need to be sent in for repair as well. So yeah, I mean, as far as
I understand not wanting to send the entire 120 pound
I wouldn't want to
thing in, but it really sounds like, it's kind of like, I don't want to make another car reference. I always make car references, but it's easy because everybody has a car. I can make bike references, but most people don't know crap about bikes, so that doesn't help. So it's kind of like, sending your wheel in to get it balanced, and you come back and you're like, oh, my alignment's off. You're like, well, you sent you needed to just bring the whole thing. Yeah. And I can understand not wanting to do that with 120. I mean, that's a hefty unit.
Sure is.
I can understand not wanting to do that, but it sounds to me like you are setting the shop and up for failure and yourself up for disappointment when you are trying to get what you think is wrong with it fixed, instead of having them go through the entire unit and say, this is what we have found that's wrong with it, and this is what it'll take to fix it.
And like, the thing we know fails most commonly in electronics just from pure age are capacitors.
Yeah, capacitors, right?
Yeah, like, and like that's not unfair or unexpected. Like you shouldn't be expecting the capacitors in any electronic device you own to literally last forever. Like they just don't. They're kind of like akin to little rechargeable batteries in some way, right? And it's like that just does not last forever and ever. At some point, capacitors need to be replaced. So that is possible, and they are sharing they have capacitors on each module as well, but there is one gigantic capacitor bank in that thing, and it's not impossible that's the thing, which would not be a cheap replacement. Those are gigantic capacitors built into this thing.
For 120 pounds, I would expect so too.
All of the advice that I gave, and I don't want to say I completely dismissed Anthem, but I did skip past them pretty quickly to the thing that I was recommending. All of that was purely to do with price. Like that was on my end, as far as the way I was talking about it. I was like, you can get something that I know is going to drive your speakers really, really well. It's going to weigh 10 pounds instead of 120 or 60. It's going to cost like half as much. So I was like, yeah, that's why I just immediately leapt to the Buckeye Class D amplifiers that I recommended, because I'm just like, it's all the things that I would want from a replacement. And then, as to replacing all 5 channels or only 3, I'm like, you've got 2 channels that are working perfectly fine. Maybe they fail one day, and then you buy yourself a nice 2-channel amp at that point. There's nothing stopping you from buying 5 channels of Buckeye amplification now, except for the fact that they don't sell any units that are 5 channels only in a single chassis, because they're using these Class D modules that are either mono or stereo. So they either sell them in a 3-channel package, or a 2, or a 6, or an 8, or a 4.
Right.
They don't actually sell a 5-channel amplifier over there. But there are others that do. Like, for example, you could, if you want to spend more, but get these same Class D amplifiers that I'm talking about, NAD. NAD sells a 5-channel amplifier version based off Purify or HyperX Encore amplifiers, and that could be an option. It costs more, but if that's no skin off your back and that's what you want to do, so I have no problem if you want to replace all 5 channels just for everything looks the same, everything's based off the same amp. So I'm not saying not to. I was just going for the least expensive option. I mean, not literally the least expensive. There are much less expensive 3-channel amplifiers that'll still do a great job. But I'm like, you can get cutting edge technology at a nicely affordable price. It's half the price of what you were thinking you might spend, and it only weighs 10 pounds. So that's how I leapt there.
Yeah. So he asks, he started looking into the Buckeye amps, but he's still trying to fully understand the differences between Purify and HyperX modules. What are our thoughts?
So,
thoughts
yeah. Hypex was their own company. They had a lead designer, and he it's not that he stopped working with Hypex altogether, but he decided to start his own Class D amplifier company, which was Purify. So Hypex and Purify share the same lead designer, and they have many similarities. Now, one of the things was when Hypex brought out their very first N-Core Class D amplifiers, they were essentially a response to the Bang & Olufsen ICE Class D amplifiers. Because those came out at a nicely affordable price. They were a clear step up in Class D amplifier performance, but they still had a few drawbacks that bothered some people. For example, the ICE amplifiers, if you are trying to power high frequencies that have low impedance, which is a little bit unusual, but there are some types of tweeters that have low impedance playing very high frequencies. And the ICE Class D amplifiers struggled with that. There would be an audible roll-off in the high frequencies, and they would even start to heat up a little bit as they tried to put high frequencies into very low impedance tweeters. So the lead designer over there at Hypex, he's like, well, I can do better than that. And that's what the first N-Core amplifiers were. But Hypex was basically, they gave him a budget to work with. They're like, here's the sort of price point that we're trying to hit. Here are the parts and suppliers that we have access to. He decided with Purify to be like, no limits, right? We're going to start from scratch. He had his group of other German engineers, and they're like, we're going to start from scratch, and we're going to build this Class D amplifier from the ground up. But then he was still working at Hypex, so some of that knowledge and some of that technique, made its way back into Hypex. So we have now these like third generation N-Cores. We have the N-Core X amplifiers. We have the new NCX or whatever it is series. So a lot of what he worked on at Purified made its way back over to Hypex. So they share a lot of commonality is essentially what's going on there. And the Hypex ones have gotten so darn good. With those updates that to me, it's truly splitting hairs. It's the thing of, you can measure the differences in distortion, like we're talking like 0.00001 versus 5 zeros in a 1. It's like it's
right.
Completely immaterial to the audibility of anything. It's technically there, but it's an academic exercise at this point. So that's why at this point, I'm like, yeah, let's just get the Hypex ones because they offer some that actually are more watts per dollar, basically, and that's where I end up landing on it.
Let's see here. He'd like to understand more about Class D versus traditional amplifier design. I know Class D has come a long way, and I'm intrigued by the weight and efficiency advantages, but I also wonder, does the lack of large front-end transformer and bulk capacitors limit the amp in a meaningful way? Are there manufacturers who build a more robust front end around the Purify or Hypex modules to improve performances? And how did these designs hold up against traditional Class A/B in terms of sound quality, especially with demanding low efficiency speakers like his Teals? So generally speaking, and we're going to go from a very top level here, your Class A amps, which, there's some people who still swear solely by
Sure.
Class A amps. It's
because of that word pure.
Because, they are very inefficient. They put off a lot of heat. It's like, 25% or something like that is...
So, I mean, like, at best, they could be 50% efficient. And then they are not because they're not 100% efficient on either end. So they end up being like 40 or 35% efficient. Yeah.
So really it's, a lot. Most of the power you put into them is coming out as heat.
Yeah.
Okay. Class AB, which... it will be even more efficient, so 50 to like 70%, depending on how, or 80% maybe is. I don't think they got to 80%.
Well, with a switch mode power supply, they got upward of there. So with a linear power supply, they're typically around 65, and then with a switch mode power supply, which is technically a Class H design, that combination, they got upwards of 80%. Yeah.
So, and then Class D amps, or sometimes they call them digital. Or
They're
whatever.
not digital. They're not
They're
digital.
not in any way digital. I don't know why that caught on, but it did. They were very efficient, which means that they could be very small, and they don't need a lot of
heat sinking or fans or anything like that.
So you're like 90, 95% efficient.
Yeah.
So the power you put in is the power you get out.
Yeah.
What was first of all, every time a new amplifier technology comes out, let's just start there, or every time a new technology comes out, people are going to look at the old technology and say it's better because and maybe objectively, measurably, it is better than the new stuff because the new stuff is brand new and they're still working out all the the bugs. So the problem with Class D amps or those types of amps was that they had real problems with impedance swings. Yeah. So if the load on the amp had a very wide impedance swing, and specifically if it went down very low into like the double, not a double, but like 2 or 3 ohms or even lower than that loads, they had big problems with that. So people would be like, okay, these are not working for full range speakers or speakers that are playing a large proportion of the frequency range because there are impedance swings. Mm-hmm. That's just typical within the speaker itself, the design itself, as the drivers are crossing over into each other and all these other things. You get in these impedance swings, which the Class D amps had a hard time with. But within the subwoofer frequency range, the impedance swings were not as great, and it was a fewer number of frequencies that were being played.
Limited bandwidth. Yeah, you could focus on a limited bandwidth.
You saw these Class D amps be almost immediately rolled into subwoofers because they were small, they were light, they were very efficient, and they didn't take up a lot of room. So you could put them in the box. Think of a Class A, your 120 pound amp inside of a subwoofer. Yeah. In some way. Even if you just took the 10-pound module and a third of the transformer power, you're still looking at 40 pounds of amplifier inside of a subwoofer. It just wasn't feasible. So, Class D amps got adopted into subwoofers very, very quickly. But the problem with Class D was that, even with the ICE amp modules that came from Bang & Olufsen, they needed a lot of processing in order to help them stay linear throughout the entire frequency range.
Yeah, they are sometimes why they get confused with digital amplifier is that they do use pulse width modulation, which means that it's basically you're oscillating between maximum power and minimum power, but you're doing so very, very rapidly. We're talking in the megahertz region. It's oscillating between those two things, and that lets you shape how much power is coming out. It's kind of like pop 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 pop, but you're doing it so fast that it's very much like a smooth transition going between the power that's actually coming to the speakers. So you have to filter off all of that above 24 kilohertz type of sound there. So you need a lot of filtering, and then you need that response to match the actual analog response of the speaker itself. So it's processing and filtering has to be added on to the basic transistor output of a Class D amplifier. But over the years, we've gotten better and better and better at doing that. So because of that efficiency that Tom mentioned, 93, 95% type efficiency that we're having right now. And then because of the advancements that we've now got in switch mode power supplies, a lot of that because of the computer industry and the military, honestly, is where a ton of that came from. We don't need these gigantic toroidal linear transformers at the front of a Class D amplifier. We don't need a massive pre-filtering capacitor bank off of that linear transformer because we can just take these switching rail voltages, send them almost directly into the digital signal processing chip that is in front of the MOSFETs that are powering the Class D amplifier. And so we can do all of this digital processing off of kind of direct voltage rail changes in the power supply. Everything shrinks down, everything gets way more efficient, and we have this fantastic filtering ability now through our digital signal processing that gets rid of essentially all of the problems that Class D amps used to have with these changing impedance swings of our speakers. So these Hypex Encore amps, these Purifi Eigentakt amplifiers, like you can connect them to any impedance speaker, And it's just ruler flat response, flatter than our best class AB amplifiers can muster these days. So yeah, in terms of, any concern about that, absolutely not. Now, some people have gotten used to an older amplifier that had some non-linearity to it, and it is possible for there to be an audible difference. But it's just that these Hypex and Purify amplifiers are essentially like clinically correct amplifiers, and if you're noticing any differences because you got used to a non-linearity or a roll-off in your own amp, and maybe that was just something that you liked. But was that all the questions there? Yeah, why the bulk capacitors? Weight and efficiency we've talked about, how they stack up. So yeah, there you go. That's that part.
So, I mean, back in the day, I did have some ICE amps that were in my system, and they were noticeably different sounding than, and this is going to come up again, I think, at the end of this episode. They were noticeably different sounding than my regular amps, my regular class AB amps. But these days, you should feel and hear very little, or not very, you should hear no difference between a traditional amp and then these types of amps, because we have gotten, and by we, I mean other people, have gotten good at, solving all these problems. If you think about it from a stove's perspective, the electric stoves, they only go on or off, right? Okay. There's no a little bit of heat that comes out of an electric stove. It's either on or off. And bad ones, are, not good about, pulsing that heat so that you get a consistent heat throughout the time that you are cooking whatever it is that you're cooking.
Yeah, that is a pulse width, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
So with these amps, it's the same thing. If it does it fast enough, it's indistinguishable from a constant heat, if you would. If it does it super slow, then you're like, wait a second. I can, suddenly my water's boiling and now it's not boiling anymore.
Or if just the filters aren't up to the task. Yeah, he did ask about are there other manufacturers, like specifically looking at Buckeye, which I mentioned because of the price, right? Are there others who do a more robust run? And actually, almost all of the other people who are selling the Purify or the Hypex ones are I don't want to say under-spec, but like they're using towards the lower end of the recommended power supplies. Buckeye has done the thing where like we're gonna overspec if we do anything. We're gonna go for switch mode power supplies that can actually supply more voltage than is actually needed. They're kind of overdoing it, whereas a lot of others are doing less. So like NAD, one of the reason their Hypex and Purify amps cost more is that they're actually still using linear power supplies. They're like, we know how to make robust linear power supplies. They're still using that. So they generate more heat, they're bigger and heavier, but they're actually not supplying quite as much voltage as the Buckeye ones are, much smaller, much less heat being generated because they're using like the highest end switch mode power supply. So they're going to the, Hypex and Purify, they give out specs to the manufacturers and it's a range, right? There's a tolerance. It's not like there's a singular number. And so Buckeye is going for the maximum on all of their designs. So that's another reason I like them. They're not leaving any headroom on the table. It's right there. So I actually thought there was another part of this question, but I'll just mention it here. There is a very noticeable on the test bench measurable difference between these Hypex and Purify Class D amps and our regular Class AB amplifiers, which is when you're going to their maximum output levels. You can see this at like Audioholics' measurements or Audio Science Review's measurements. When you see the how many watts are coming out of this thing, based on the frequency, it'll be like this flat line going across, but then you'll see that there is this distortion rise on your Class AB amplifiers as you go to the higher and higher wattage. So the distortion starts to rise, and it's like a kind of a swooping. You can see where it's starting to rise up, and you draw whatever your thing, 0.1% total harmonic distortion, right? It's a common thing. So there'll be a line that goes across, and it'll be well below that for almost everything. And then as you're getting up to, if it's a 200 watts per channel amplifier, you'll get up to 180, 190, and it'll start to creep up, and you get to 200 if their specs are completely accurate. Like that's where it's at 0.1. But then you can keep going more power up to 300 watts or something like that. The distortion just keeps rising, but it's on this kind of gradual rise as it goes.
Right.
The Class D amps that have essentially the same amount of output current We talked about this in a previous episode, but there's a limit on the transistors of how much current, how many amps, amperes can come out of that transistor, and that's kind of the hard limit of the amplifier. On these Hypex and Purify, what you'll see is if it's the same limit in terms of how many amperes can come out of that transistor, it'll stay at that like below 0.1 total harmonic distortion. In fact, it's like way down with multiple zeros, all the way to that like 300 watt figure where the Class A B amp like was like rising and rising, but it got to 300 watts and then kind of, completely tapped out. It'll like go all the way up to that, and then it'll go straight up in distortion like a cliff edge. So it's like it in a way you have more power available, but you have no headroom whatsoever beyond where it goes above that like rated 0.1% total harmonic distortion, right? So it looks like it goes higher, but then there's no headroom on the Class Ds. So sometimes they'll spec it to be like, well, if it were a Class AB amplifier, we'd call it a 200 watt amplifier, and then there'd be 3 decibels of headroom above it. But it's kind of like this flat, low distortion line and then a cliff edge on the Class Ds. So that's where that comes in.
I mean, I actually prefer that. I'd rather just get every bit of the power that I was supposed to get, and then not have
just
like
kind
some
of
distortion creeping in.
It just stops.
Yeah. Just stops. Sorry. Infinite Gary. Gary noticed that his Runco Q750 projector doesn't have any sort of motion smoothing sense. And isn't that thing like 1 million years old?
Well, that's his next sentence.
Oh. Part of that is probably just how old it is at this point. Okay. Yes, that is true. You have identified the reason for this.
Yes.
But there were displays back when it came out that had motion smoothing, and every projector you can buy today seems to have some sort of frame interpolation option. Motion has always looked natural to him on his Runco. Here's a question in search of a problem. And we seem to always say to turn any sort of motion smoothing off anyways, but what was actually different about his Q750 model that resulted in there not being any motion smoothing options? And why do the newest projectors all seem to market it as though it is needed and an advantage to have it? Okay, so I don't know why yours doesn't have it. Mm-hmm. It could go one of two ways, and Rob will tell you which way it went. But usually, if a feature is not in a device that you have bought, it is either because your device was at the lower end and didn't get the feature because it wasn't high enough, or it was so high that people are like, we can't have it do all that stuff or it won't be good. Because that's the way people who buy that sort of thing think. This is in the audio video world. Video world people are like, or AV people are like, okay, the middle ground, it has to have all the stuff. But at the beginning, you don't get stuff because you didn't spend enough money. At the end, you don't get stuff because you don't want it to be there because you want your device to only do the one thing it's supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And then you want to buy a different, equally expensive box to do the other thing that it should also be able to do. But then you just take it out of there like, I don't know, maybe buy an Envy thing to do the processing or the whatever. And then you keep buying more boxes because that's what's cool, is having extra boxes that only have one switch on it that just turns it on and off in a blue light. So that's that. As far as why we always recommend, or why they all seem to think that it is needed and that is included in projectors, it's because for the same reason there's a bunch of stickers on the front of your AV receiver. The more things it's got, the people who don't or aren't convinced to buy a thing exactly, if you can put one more sticker on it, maybe that's what'll make them buy it. And that's why they have all this stuff in there.
I'm going to say it's primarily about the time that it came out, in that we really didn't see motion smoothing on displays until most of them were, or not most of them, but until they were running at 120 hertz.
Yeah.
When the panel started refreshing at 120 hertz, like the panel is always refreshing at 120 hertz. So you got to fill those 120 frames with something.
It's going to be doing it whether you like it or not.
That's right.
You might as well have it do something you want it to do.
It is going to be flashing 120 times a second. Now, you could show 60 actual images and 60 black interstitials in between, black frame insertion. That's an option. You can just double up all of your 60s. And if you're doing things that's 24 frames a second, you can 5 times each frame. That's an option. Or you could start making up frames that didn't actually exist in the original signal and inserting them in between the real frames. And that was motion smoothing. So it all came about because of the 120 hertz. Your Runco Q750 tops out at 60, stops at 60 hertz. So there have been some 60 hertz displays that had some kind of motion smoothing, but they came well after all of the 120 hertz displays. Yours was just like, yeah, I'm going to show 60 at 60. I'm going to double up 30s, and 24s I'm going to show at either 48 or 72. Can't remember if his did 72, but it just doubled or tripled those frames. It didn't make up any frames in between. So it was because it was a 60 hertz display. You didn't have motion smoothing on 60 hertz displays back when that came out.
There you go.
Yeah.
Dean recently got himself a Marantz AV8805A Pre-Pro to replace his Marantz SR7009.
Mm-hmm.
He was on the fence about it for quite a while, but he's really happy with the AV8805A, so thankfully no regrets.
Hooray.
While he was doing the upgrade, his equipment rack was in disarray for several days, and with his Panamax MR5100 power conditioners both completely unplugged. When he finally plugged everything back into power, one of his MR5100 units was flashing a red warning symbol and indicating that the incoming voltage was above safe levels at 139 volts. He quickly powered everything back off, did some resets, and checked some fuses, but he couldn't find anything obviously wrong. He went away for a bit to do some research on what the problem could be. Everything was still physically plugged into the outlets, but just powered off at the device level. To his surprise, when he came back, absolutely everything was working perfectly fine now, and there were no more warning lights or any indication of an over voltage. Was it just a glitch? Is it an indication that this is one Panamax unit that might be on its way out and it's time to look for a replacement? Does he need to be terrified? I mean, maybe.
I really doubt it. This sounds to me...
I would be surprised.
This sounds to me like maybe you did the thing where you plugged all the power cords of all your devices into... It sounds like he has more than one of these Panamaxes, but you plugged all the power cords into all of into the Panamax, and then you plugged the Panamax into the wall, or flicked the power switch on the Panamax.
Yeah, so all those power devices are now all trying to draw power all at the same time.
That's right.
And therefore, your Panamax is like, oh my God.
Well, and
you can't take it.
You can have what appears to be like. I mean, it's essentially a surge. It's a surge on the potential in this circuit. All came from the devices you're trying to power, not from there being a surge at the supply end. But you have this difference in potential, which was abnormally large because, like, all of your devices, all of those power supplies have some capacitors in them. Everything does. And, you were apparently away long enough that all of those capacitors discharged, and then simultaneously, they all tried to charge up again. So you came back a little while later, even though they were all in standby, they weren't like fully powered on, but they all got to charge their capacitors up, which doesn't take very long at all. It's a few seconds, but you get this warning at first. Actually, I'm going to have a mention of that. I'm coming up to my Sasi amplifier review just here, and I can touch on that in this section too for the amplifier review. But yeah, I don't think you have anything to worry about. I'm highly suspicious and suspect that's all it was, that you probably plugged everything into the Panamax first and then turned the Panamax on. If you want to avoid the same thing in the future, have the Panamax plugged into the wall, turn the Panamax on, and then one by one plug your devices into the Panamax. And I highly doubt this will ever happen again.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, Rob, let's hear your review of this amplifier.
Yes, so we are talking about, this was purchased by Sasi. He had it delivered straight to me. This company is in Slovenia, and they are shipping directly from Slovenia, and they ship worldwide. So this is Apollon, or I'm not sure if that's the correct pronunciation, but that's what I'm going with. And he specifically went with a stereo amplifier, 2-channel amplifier, based on the Purifi Eigentakt 1ET6525 SA stereo Class D amplifier modules. So this is not their most expensive one. It's not their cheapest one, but it had the sort of looks and it had the specifications that he was going for. And so that's the one he bought, but he decided to send it to me first so that I could have a listen to it and form my impressions on it and share those on the podcast and share that with him. So I will just talk first about, receiving the package. Came in a very plain cardboard box, which had actually been like manually modified. They had cut the box so that it was about the right shape. So this wasn't exactly like super high-end bespoke cardboard that it came in. It was not double boxed, but they added extra cardboard in there for protection purposes. Inside, they did have these 4 foam corners, and the amplifier itself was packed in bubble wrap, and then any of the spacing was just filled in with crumpled up paper. So I'm not going to claim that this is like super high-end packaging or that it was a fancy box that it came in. It absolutely wasn't, but it did the job. It seemed to arrive perfectly fine, and it all came in a little bubble wrap package. So yeah, the finish on this thing, I really, really like it. One of the reasons Sasi was willing to, go to a different country for this purchase, because he knows about Buckeye, and we've chatted about that. And the price on the Buckeye, for this same amplifier module is lower than Apollon's. But he's like, he wanted the straight up just nicer looking chassis. The Buckeye chassis are very plain, kind of industrial. They're just black powder coat. There are little gaps in the edges because it's it's not like injection molded or anything like that. It's stamped metal chassis to keep the price down. So Apollon just went a little bit higher end, and it is a very nice chassis on this thing. It's brushed aluminum finish on the outside. There are no internal fans. It is relying on the external aluminum chassis to act as a heat sink. And yeah, on the underside, you just got some 4 small compliant rubber feet. There's nothing vibrating inside of this, so it's not like you need decouplers or anything like that. But yeah, you can see a few little screw holes on the bottom if you're trying to service this amplifier, get into it. All of the screws that you need to unscrew are on the bottom of this chassis here. There are no other fasteners or anything visible on any other part of this external chassis, which is different from the Buckeyes. So I think it looks very nice. It's not like, super bright and fancy or anything, but on the back, we've got some very high-end 5-way binding posts. I was using banana plugs. They held those very securely. I don't think you need locking banana plugs in this thing whatsoever. However, if you're using just traditional banana plugs, they might compress the little, outward springy leaves of your banana plug over time, because these are quite tight fitting. The tight fittingness also goes for those RCA plugs. They, to me, seem like they must be like what Monster cable used to do, right. Which is they are not perfectly to international RCA spec. They are too tight. And I think that's intentional. Some people really like that. It's very, very secure, but it worries me a little bit that when you go to unplug an RCA cable that you've plugged in there, it's really tight, overly so, which I do think was intentional. Now, it also has XLR connections. Those are standard. Those work wonderfully well. And then you'll also see on the back here, you have some little toggle switches to select. So one of them is very simple. You can independently, there's the 2 channels on the back, choose whether you're using the balanced connection or the single-ended RCA connection independently for the 2 of them. So you can have an XLR on speaker number 1 and an RCA on speaker number 2 if you want to. And then very nicely, they also have independent gain settings for the 2 channels. So if you're using XLR on one and you want to use a lower gain setting, a lower voltage gain for the XLR connection so that it level matches with the RCA connection on the other side, you can do that. It's not a single gain setting. So here is where I came across the one and only little minor problem with this specific unit. Okay, this has nothing to do with the model or the design overall. On the speaker number 1 side is a 4-position gain switch. And when I very first looked at it, I'm like, what is that saying? Because there are commas and vertical lines on the gain settings. And I was like, oh, it's Europe. Those commas are decimals. And instead of a comma in between the settings, they used a vertical line. So it's just a typeface thing. So you have 12.8, 20.5, 27.5, or 29 decibels of gain. Those are your 4 settings options. And I found that on the speaker number 1 side on this particular unit, if I put it all the way up to 29, which I did at first because I was using RCA connections to begin with in my testing, and 29 decibels is the standard for an ATHX amplifier. This is not THX certified, but that's just the standard. And on that speaker number 1, because I was touching this amplifier as I was using it, up at that 29 dB setting on the speaker number 1 side, the gain would drop out sometimes. You could jiggle that switch a little bit and the gain would come back. I was like, it's a slightly loose connection. So that's just a physical thing of that one little switch. I found that on this particular unit. I have no idea if that's, common, an issue or anything like that, but I don't think Sasi's going to want to ship it all the way back to Slovenia to fix. It is if there's anything where they possibly cheaped out at all, it was on that little switch. It's like it's a jiggly little switch. It doesn't feel particularly expensive or high end. It would be very easy to fix when you go inside if you have very basic soldering skills to replace that little 4-pot switch. But that was the only kind of minor thing. Now, all of that is kind of immaterial because as I was testing this, the first thing I do with any amplifier is I plug it into power, I plug it into nothing else, and I listen if the amplifier itself produces any sort of hum. Because some of them do. Some of them, just the amplifier all by itself connected to nothing produces an audible hum just from the power coming out of the wall going through its power supply. There is nothing on the front of this amp other than a power switch. You can change the dimming level of the little light that is inside of that power switch. There's one more toggle over there, including turning it all the way off, so I kind of like that. The other thing I just wanted to mention very quickly is that it did not come with a power cord. Sasi explained, he's like, oh yeah, because they're in Europe and they knew they were shipping it to North America, so they didn't want to include a European power cord. So they just didn't include a power cord. It is a 3-prong IEC power cord. So like my Denons, they use a 2-prong IEC power cord, so I couldn't just borrow one of those. I had to borrow a computer power cord because those are all
easy enough to find.
Very easy enough to find, but it just, it didn't come with that. So just one thing to mention there. But yeah, there's nothing else besides the power button on the front of this thing. You can turn that light off. And so this is very, very, very quiet in terms of the power supply. I had to literally press my ear against the top of this chassis, and then I could barely make out the faintest little hum from the power supply inside. And there's no external power brick or anything like that. It's all built into this very compact little unit. It's under 10 pounds, this one. So yeah, noise from the amplifier itself, no problem at all. So then I did the thing of I plugged in the RCA connections. This is to my Denon A1H, which I set into preamplifier mode, and I turned the master volume on the Denon all the way up to 0 dB, and I reset everything back to defaults as far as gain coming out of the preamp outlets and everything like that. And I cranked up the volume, and I'm like, and I connected my speakers, and I'm like, is there any idle hiss? And with it set at the highest gain, at that 29 dB gain, if I got my ear within about, I'd say, 2 inches of the tweeter, I could make out a little bit of noise floor hiss, the faintest amount. It was substantially quieter than powering it from my Denon's built-in amplifiers. Not that they are bad. If I am 1 foot away from my speakers, I can't hear the idle hiss with the Denon powering it. But with this one, at the 29 dB gain stage, I had to be within 2 inches, my ear to the tweeter, to hear anything. I put that down to the 27.5 dB setting, and it was silent. I didn't physically push my ear against my ribbon tweeters because I don't want to do that, but it was silent. So am I impressed with the noise floor of this Apollon Purifi Class D amplifier? Yes, I am. It is objectively a lower noise floor than the built-in Class AB amps of my Denon A1H. It is a lower noise floor than any other amplifier I have owned or used. My ATI amplifiers are not this dead quiet at that 27.5 dB setting with an RCA connection. So there it is. I'm very impressed on the noise floor level. So I did try it with the XLR connection mainly to make sure that it worked and that Sasi wasn't getting a lemon as far as that goes. Worked perfectly fine. And even though the numbers don't quite add up perfectly, to get a good level match, I lowered the gain for the XLR connection to that 20.5 setting, 1 click down. And then I did actually change the trim level inside. The trim level at the 20.5 setting, I had 3 dB higher for the XLR connection than I did for the RCA. And that seemed to level match him. Even though the numbers by what's indicated there in my setup, that's what worked to get those level match between XLR and RCA. I think that's all the preamble on how all of that goes. So how did the thing sound? Well, this was a good exercise. I haven't really done an amplifier comparison in my own setup for a little while, and it was a good reminder because I'm not immune to first impressions. I'm not immune to misattributing what I'm hearing to that first impression, that initial thing. And so right away, when I powered things up, I was using my Ascend Acoustic speakers to begin with. I was like, because I had Zone 2 on my Denon powering a pair of Ascend speakers, and then I had an identical pair of Ascend speakers being powered by this Apollon amplifier, and I was switching between Zone 2 and main zone so that I could do a very quick A/B comparison. I'm like, the Denon sounds, I'm going to use a horrible word here, sounded warmer. It sounded a little fuller. And I was like, am I purely imagining that? Is that just a volume difference? Because I tried to level match them as carefully as I could, as it would allow. But of course, it turned out it's like, despite careful setup, it was positioning. It was all positioning of the speakers, because the speakers can't literally occupy exactly the same space. They were beside each other, and my listening position. So if I got up and moved, or if I physically moved the speakers, I could basically get rid of that, the Denon sounds a little bit warmer or something like that. But that very first impression is kind of hard to completely ignore and get out of your head. So I see where reviewers, right, are doing this, and they're like, I got the impression that this amplifier sounded warmer than the other. I'm attributing it to the amplifier because that's the thing I'm testing, and what else changed in my system? Everything else is set to be even. I'm using the same speakers attached to both. It's like, what else could change that? And that first impression, I'm not immune to that. And it was a good reminder to myself because, yes, it was positioning of the speakers. It was not that one amplifier naturally, inherently sounded warmer than the other. But those weren't the only speakers that I used. I do have a pair of Emotiva speakers with their folded ribbon tweeters, and by the measurements, the tweeters in the high frequencies drop in impedance, right? I was talking about how most tweeters don't. Most tweeters go up in impedance as the frequency goes up, but the folded ribbons go down. And so I wanted to test that out. And here I had to switch back and forth, so I am relying on some audio memory, but it was like consistently on those low impedance folded ribbon tweeters, the Apollon had no roll off as I went up and up and up in frequency. I was using sweeps, and I was using my glockenspiel tests and all that type of stuff. And the Denon had, and I'm talking like a 1-2 dB different. Like I was nitpicky here, but over and over and over, because I listened to those sweeps over and over and over with these folded ribbon tweeters, is like that Apollon remained ruler flat, as high as my hearing still allows me to hear, as loud or as quiet as I was able to play in my test scenario. And it was completely ruler flat, whereas the Denon on that low impedance tweeter started to have the slightest bit of a high frequency roll off as you went up. So I'm willing to admit I could be wrong about that, but measurements tend to bear that out as well. That I'm not taking, but from reviewers that I trust who can do those sorts of measurements tend to bear that out as well. That Class D, the Purify amp, is absolutely ruler flat. So yeah. Was I able to test this thing to the max and push it to its limits? No, I just don't have the space to do that. I borrowed the meeting room that my apartment building has, so I had a larger space to test this out in, but like I wasn't able to get to the point where I'm like, I'm noticing the harmonic distortion because I'm just playing it loud enough to do that. Something's going to give before the amplifiers would give, so I wasn't able to test maximum headroom on this thing. That's just a limit of my ability to test. But neither my Denon A1H or this Apollon was tapping out in any way in those settings. They could both get very, very loud powering just a pair of speakers. And then being the Class D, after using it for hours on end, it was just slightly warm to the touch on the top of that aluminum chassis. My Denon was throwing off much more heat, even though it was only powering one pair of speakers. It was very noticeable how clearly efficient that Purify amplifier really is. It was warmer than when it came out of the shipping box, but it was just mildly warm to the touch. Everything seems to be functioning well. I would recommend using that 27.5 setting instead of the 29 anyway, which is a good thing because that 29 on the speaker one was a little bit jiggly on it. But yeah, everything seemed to work well there. And because I can't get to that maximum headroom, I wasn't able to notice that thing where the distortion might start to rise on the Class AB that my Denon's had, and then the Class D would just keep going flat the entire way. I wasn't able to put that under test, but very impressed with the noise floor on this thing. I don't think Sasi's going to be disappointed in it at all. I don't think anybody would. And ruler flat response on this thing. So again, that sort of first impression that got into my head, and try as I might, maybe not able to completely ignore it. The other thing in sound quality was like, I go through progressions of chords, I go through bassoon music, I go through a lot of John Williams music, I do all of those things, and it was like, I look for that delineation. I listen for that delineation of, playing that series of chords. Can I focus in and pick out each individual note in that chord? If I'm playing a symphonic piece, can I focus in on just one instrument and pick it out of the orchestra? And, I had the impression that I was able to do that slightly better with the Apollon than with the Denon at pretty high playback levels, is what I had to get to. And I was doing mono tests at that point, like Harman recommends, and I was right in front of the speakers and all the things you're supposed to do to try and negate any sort of variables that can be around. Still could have been completely imagined on my part. It can be sort of perhaps it was a reverse masking effect of having that, completely flat treble response that the Class D Purify was giving me, that the Class ABs were maybe a decibel and a half quieter at that point, something like that. But yeah, I can give that subjective, sort of, I'm not going to call it a conclusion, impression. These are purely impressions, not a proper review. I don't have measurements to give you on this, but yeah, I don't think there'll be any disappointment with this thing at all.
All right. There we go.
That's it.
Yeah,
for this week.
I'm not doing that. All right, that's it for this week. I want to thank I have to scroll up. I did not scroll up. Thank our listeners of the week. We want to thank our 126 patrons over at patreon.com/AVRant podcast for signing up to be a monthly contributor to our efforts here to continue to educate people and solve their problems.
Sure, yeah. That is patreon.com/AVRant podcast if you'd like to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation. So a big thanks to our 126 patrons over there.
We want to thank Jack for offering up a Dayton OmniMic to one of our lucky listeners.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Jack. If you'd like to have your name in the random draw we're going to do for who gets that Dayton OmniMic, then send it in, question@avrant.com. That's where you send your questions as well. But send the email that says, hey, I am interested in Jack's Dayton OmniMic, and we'll add you to the little folder where currently there are only two entrants, so your odds are very good. That's how that'll work for that OmniMic.
We also want to thank those who sent us some notes of gratitude, including Anonymous, Greg, Rob M., Mark, and Sasi. Thank you for thanking us.
Yes, indeed. I'll say the names one more time. We got Anonymous, Greg, Rob M., Mark, and Sasi. Thank you so much for the notes of gratitude and encouragement. We really appreciate them. And a big, big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
If you want to get your question answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. For AVRant, I'm Tom Andry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.